Right. Okay. So we'll start with just general introductions for those that are in the room. Just because of time, I would just ask if you can all go into the chat, and I'm going to ask two questions. That if you can share those two questions, where you're from, and if you're a free diver, what's your PB? All right. So we've got people joining us at the moment. And I'm obviously going to have to keep letting people in. So, Casimir, Tessa, Merritt. All right, so those of you coming in, we're just sharing where we are from or where we are now, and a little bit about our free, if you're a free diver, what your PB is. If you're not a free diver, then that's absolutely fine as well. Caroline just started in Germany, Tristan an instructor, Francisca 30.3, Oliver 43.7, Riyadh, also from the UK, Oliver, great. Joy, began free diving 17, haven't dived for 15 years. Okay, so we're going to get started. It's really nice that you're all here. I'm going to spotlight, now how do we do this? Spotlight for everybody.
That's me.
Oh, yeah, there we go. So it's us. Jamie from Florida, VB medical team. Oh, cool.
Oh, nice. Jamie, hello.
All right. So thank you all for joining us this morning. So most of you know who I am, and I think most of you also know who Gary is. So I've been free diving, I think about the same time as Gary, maybe a year longer. I started in 2006. And within 9 months of training, with a gap to have hepatitis C, hepatitis A. Hepatitis
that's
A.
my favourite one.
Which is the okay one to have. It's through food and not through anything, not through blood or anything like that. So I had Hep A. But yeah, from starting free diving, and I think 9 months off to have Hep A, and 9 months of training, I had 3 world records, and which is a very, very different trajectory to Gary's, because he's been diving for 15 years. And in the last couple of years, he's started to get really, really, really impressive numbers, deeper than I ever went. So I'm now based in La Palma. I left Dahab in 2021. And the thing that has always really fascinated me about freediving is the mind-body connection. And that's sort of, anyone who knows me and has worked with me or followed my work will know that it was for me always about understanding the mind. And when the mind is calm and relaxed, and we are in control of the mind, then the body follows the mind, and these amazing things can happen, which is really how my quite ridiculous freediving career happened. And this is really where my work is now. So I'm tending to work primarily online at the moment, but still helping freedivers around the world with that mind-body connection, and also taking it beyond the ocean, because what happens to us on our dives will be happening to us in other areas of our life. And that's what I find so fascinating, is to start to make the connections and get a much deeper understanding of where it all starts, you know, what sits behind the success and the failure, what sits behind the experiences that we have. And the seeds for me are always in the mind. So Gary started, as I said, 15 years ago. He was my very first student in 2009, which is just such a lovely connection. He was living with me in Dahab in 2020, and I think early 2021 before I left Dahab. And last year he hit 112 meters constant weight, and is now really for me one of the most exciting deep free divers still currently active in the world today. So yeah, so where I'm really excited that Gary could join me this morning. And Gary, can you tell me a little bit, because you obviously have the transition from you talked in your podcast with Donnie in the Free Dive Cafe about, being quite scared at 12 meters, and how you made that transition from a nervous and hesitant and quite a normal beginner's scenario to where you are now, where you told me that there is no such thing as a bad free dive, or you don't allow bad free dives to happen. Like, that is a huge transformation, and it's obviously happened over a long period of time. Can you talk us through, of course there's a lot of training, but also, the backstory of what happened sort of inside of you and how you've progressed from that fearful beginning?
Yeah, in a nutshell. Hello, everyone. Yeah, that 12 meters, like, that was my first course down in a quarry in South England, South Wales. And yeah, I can really distinctly remember the feeling of fear, but like good fear that drives you. It was like I was scared, but I wasn't panicking. It was fear, the kind of fear that keeps you switched on. Mm. So I definitely describe it as fear, but I don't think fear needs to be a horrible emotion at all. I think it's something that can keep you quite linked into what's quite present, actually.
Okay. I mean, to somebody who's listening going, well, okay, I know fear in the water and it doesn't feel good to me. How would you differentiate then good fear to this really sort of paralyzing and very limiting fear?
Yeah, it's that's a good question. It depends on how you handle it, I guess. Bad fear will make, like, the pyramid crumble, whereas good fear will be enough of an input to keep you switched on and focused and make you want to go into it a little bit. So maybe it's fear, but without the apprehension. It was kind of like, I'm doing fear, but I was also doing something really cool. I was wearing wetsuits and long fins, and it was like, wow, I'm on a freediving course. This is epic, but new and a bit like, whoa, I'm not naturally good at it immediately.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one thing that when I'm listening to you and I reflect back also on my experiences of, probably when I would be doing much deeper dives, sort of, I think maybe approaching the 70s and the 80s, was I had a sense of like the butterflies in the stomach before a dive. It's like, this is fear. But for me, the way that I interacted with that feeling was, rather than to let it close me down and say, shit, I'm doing something that's really dangerous here today, I related to it in a way that I said, okay, well, I'm doing something I've never done before, which means I'm going to learn something new about myself today. I'm going to discover a new layer of potential, which is inside of me, but I haven't had the opportunity to experience yet. And so those butterflies, which could have made me kind of close down and just go shit and be contracted and nervous in the water and then fucked up my equalization and turned early and and gone, see, I was justified to have that fear because it was a dangerous dive and it all went wrong. I would look at them and say they were the butterflies that herald an unfolding, so that I could embrace them and be curious and have anticipation about the experience rather than going into this frightened state. Does that kind of resonate with you a little bit?
Yeah, it definitely does. But it definitely does. But if we talk about like specifically my first sort of experience of proper free diving, you know, I was a beginner, so definitely an element of the fear I was feeling messed stuff up for sure, because I couldn't equalize past 12. So I had to go back and finish the course the next weekend, and I'm sure the reason I couldn't equalize was partly some technical, I didn't have the technical skill, but also because I was maybe a bit more scared shitless than I was focused. I'm saying now, I was focused, but probably I was quite a ball of nerves, and that was causing everything to just feel difficult at times. Yeah, but then there was some moments where it was like, okay, this is still scary, but I'm doing it, and that was when fear becomes quite enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, at that very early stage, what was it that drew you onwards? Like, you know, had you seen other good free divers? Did you have a strong relationship to the water when you were a child? What was it that made you, despite the fear, made you want to, you know, this is something I want to get good at?
Yeah, there was definitely, you know, because I was in my 20s then, and there was an element of this is something new and different, which made me want to do it. But then I always had this connection with water. I was a swimmer like through my childhood and into my teens. So, but that's like swim squad training, and I still loved it. That's like getting up 5 a.m. and doing 3 kilometers before school, you know, 5 days a week. 3 kilometers was a short session for real swimmers, you know. Yeah. So I always had that enjoyment in the water, and I clearly remember enjoying being under the water a little bit more than being above it. You know, it's nice floating around, but when you're under, it's quiet and it's just you. And that's still what I love about the water. Yeah.
So having got, you know, your AIDA 2-star under your belt and you know, gone through those early fears, how did you progress from there?
Well, immediately I had to go back the next weekend to get the 16 meters, I think it was, to be certified. So yeah, I had to work a little bit, and this was like October in Wales, which for anyone that knows England, October's a wet, soggy, cold month. So yeah, I was into it enough for it to keep me coming back. And then I was a landlocked freediver. I was living in London, and I was I had I think at the time I had a gardening firm. So yeah, I was pool sessions once, maybe twice a week. That's all I was doing, and it was only probably 6 months in, someone said to me, there's a pool competition in London, and the British national competition. So I thought, why not? I didn't even think twice. I thought, yeah, let's have a go. So I did. I got two red cards out of 3 dives. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Messed everything up. I had no coach, no one helping me. Yeah, I messed everything up. Yeah.
Did you enjoy it as an experience?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting some interesting people, and I was really lucky because I had there was a couple of key people that were diving at the time I started, and they're some of my best friends now.
Yeah.
And they sort of really took me under their wing, and it was really nice to be diving with the best divers in the country, and I was lucky enough to just get in with them.
So, I mean, I know that you've told me before that you thrive on pressure, and that for me is kind of an interesting statement, because again, it's that capacity to maybe feel the fear like the famous book, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway, or feel the fear and just get contracted. So thriving under pressure, I know that, you know, you're a tree surgeon, you've been up, you know, you do stuff that a lot of people don't do or wouldn't want to do. How do you think that thriving under pressure, I mean, firstly, where did it come from? Is it just something that's in you, or is it something that you learned as a child through your swim training or through your tree surgery or through other parts of life? Yeah, let's start there. I mean, where do you think it comes from? Can it be learned?
Yeah, no, I believe it can be learned. Definitely. I think, you know, if you could use your freediving example, if someone's PB is 50, like a 50-meter dive might feel quite scary for them. You know, you ask them to do a 20-meter dive and they're going to do those all day, every day. So what's the difference? You know, we boil it down. The difference is the depth, and the difference is psychological. You're more prepared, you're more used to, you're more accustomed to a 20-meter dive. So they're going to be perfect. Whereas a 50 is you're getting a little bit out of your comfort zone. So it's just about bringing the comfort zone level along with your ability. So I think it definitely can be learned. But the activity you're doing has to be tapered towards your ability, you know?
So tapered, you mean like this sort of conservative approach to freediving, like don't bite off big chunks, don't scare yourself shitless, like do it in a way that is safe. And it's not just the physical adaptation, but the mind needs to adapt as well.
Absolutely, you need to give the mind time to catch up with the body. And I see it every day here. You know, you see people repeatedly failing dives that are 95% of their PBs, and you know, for me the answer is kind of simple: the dive's too stressful. You're not ready for it yet. But it's hard to say that to people. People don't sometimes want to listen to that, especially if they've come out for a 3-week trip and they've got bottom of the blue hole in their mind, you know. But yeah, when you boil it down, you know, a dive to 90-95% of your PB is going to be stressful. So you need to be as best prepared as possible, which so kind of proves that it can be learned.
Yeah. So how have you, like, we're talking then about that 5%, that small jump to the next level. What techniques do you use for that part of the mental adaptation? Because the physical is obviously time and practice and stretching, and, you know, all of the exercises that freedivers see other freedivers doing, and they sign up for online courses and they do this and they do that. But that 5% for the mind, how do you make that jump? How do you take yourself there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the sort of the two sides are so linked, like a spider web, you know, because if you're better physically prepared, you're going to be more comfortable with the idea of going, etc. So they're really intertwined. Specifically, mental techniques is definitely when I started to really learn about yoga nidra and techniques like that, my static went through the roof. So you could, you know, I don't know if you could argue that yoga nidra made me better at static, but it made me able to access skills that I already had probably that I couldn't access before. So yoga nidra put 2 minutes on my static within a few months, and these are not the 2 minutes from 1 minute to 3 minutes. These are the 2 minutes from 5.5 to 7.5. So they're really hard minutes, you know. So yeah, it was yeah, in the beginning you just by doing static a lot or by doing anything a lot you improve. But yeah, when I brought in yoga nidra, it helped massively with static. And then when I started to really put more attention on meditation, it really helped my deep diving when I sort of progressed from being 80-90 meter diver to over 100.
And how did you get into meditation? Do you have specific techniques, or was there a particular teacher or path that you followed?
Sorry. Hello, Yangdi. Happy birthday. Sorry, she's a long-term student of mine. I just wanted to say hello. I was really lucky actually, because my mum's from Thailand, even though I don't really look like that. Don't know what that's supposed to look like, but yeah, my mum's from Thailand, so I had sort of a one foot in the sort of Buddhist Eastern side, and then another foot, going to a Church of England school and being forced to go to church on a Wednesday. But yeah, so Sundays for me were spent down at the biggest Thai Buddhist temple in Europe, which is in Wimbledon, in South London. So Sundays for me were spent there doing kickboxing, Thai dancing, language lessons, and they introduced meditation. It's something that's part of Thai culture. So they introduced me to Vipassana meditation. So I guess if you compare me to other friends of mine that grew up in the same area, I had this kind of side to my life that perhaps helped me when in adult life I wanted to look at those things again. It wasn't completely new to me.
Yeah. And so now, I mean, is meditation a daily routine? Is it, an unbreakable, unnegotiable part of your warm-up before you go diving? How is meditation part of your current journey?
Yeah, I try my best to keep up with daily, because I set myself, it's only a 15-minute meditation I do, and that's, everyone's got 15 minutes in a day, but also I learned, when I've sort of in a training period, I always start, and they say you should do 30 days consecutive to get the full benefit. And if I didn't reach that 30 days for whatever reason, I'd really tear myself up about it. And in recent years, I've just sort of started to be a bit easy. So I try not to miss 2 consecutive days. If I miss one, okay, that's life. Life gets in the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to keep just general meditation for daily if I can. And then before diving, I'll spend a bit more time in my head, especially as the last couple of years I've been diving no warm-up.
Yeah.
So doing 100 plus, no warm-up, you do need to spend more time on land, just being in your right space. And meditation is the only way I can do that.
Yeah. Is it a particular technique? Is it just breath awareness, or do you have like a mantra, or I don't know, is there some kind of visualization that you do?
Visualization, yes and no. I think, like, when people say they visualize their entire dive, their breathe up, putting the nose clip on, how many pulls, etc. I just can't. my mind goes. So I just can't analyze all those details and play it through like a movie. That's not how and this is after, I'm not an advanced meditator, but I'm a mediocre, and I can't focus for that long. So I focus more on like sensations. For me, like, imprinting pleasure is a really crucial thing that I do. And it's just a glorious way to sit and spend 15 minutes imagining yourself on a deep dive, being underwater, and just imagining pure pleasure, really.
So what is it specifically about what are the points that you bring in that, for you are the pure pleasure?
It's I always have a strong image of myself free falling, because that's a really cool moment. And as I've got deeper, I enjoy the ascents a lot more.
Okay.
Right? Probably because it's longer. It might take me a minute and a half to swim up from really deep. So I enjoy that feeling of using your body for what it's for. It's a really good thing to express your physicality. Whether it's going to the gym, whether it's climbing a wall, whether it's, and I just feel like I'm doing something that I was born to do. And that just brings me so much joy. That this is why I don't know, bad dives, I don't like them. They don't happen. I don't want them. So it's just pure pleasure.
Okay. I've got a lot of questions that are kind of coming up in my mind at the moment. I don't want to go too far ahead, because you also mentioned yoga nidra as being really a game changer for your static. For those people who don't know what yoga nidra is, it's a form of accessing the subconscious through a sort of a guided meditation and really deep relaxation, which helps sort of the mind to relax, and then the body sort of follows through that. Could you, I mean, can you sort of sum up a before and an after? I mean, yeah, the numbers speak for themselves, but like the actual experience, like how did you go from 5.5 to 7.5? What difference did yoga nidra make to those last, you know, and it's the least pleasant part of static, as everybody knows, is that, you know, the final few minutes, second half.
Yeah, I guess like I mentioned before, like with I think it's quite surprising where someone's natural limit lays with freediving. I think generally with most people it's quite high. It's just we can't access it. We have quite a good natural talent for it. I say to people all the time that you've probably got the fitness, an average person has the fitness to be able to do a 50-60 meter free dive. To be honest, it's a minute and a half of work, but there's so much other technical stuff around it. So yeah, before perhaps it was an element of just muscling through, and you know, with a bit of willpower. You can see these people when you take intro courses. You know, someone with a bit of willpower can muscle themselves through, and certainly in a pool setting, you meet people that can quite happily hold their breath and swim until they black out, which is obviously never the aim. So yeah, perhaps beforehand it was just I was just finding my natural limit, and I was starting to find my way. I increased up to around 4 fairly quick by just doing it once a week. Some dry stuff at home, and then yeah, I put in a bit of extra like thinking, took some good advice, got myself to around 5.5, and then I guess when the yoga nidra came in, I had more of a map of what I needed to do. It was bringing more structure to the dive. It was enabling me to like enter the beginning of a breath hold like much more prepared, and not only like physically prepared with a low heart rate and stuff like that, but also mentally prepared. And like I mentioned before, the physical ability is great. You can be the fittest person in the world, but if the mental ability and the confidence isn't coming up alongside, you can't access any of that power you have, you know. So
did it change your self-talk during the static?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I had a script now, you know. I had something to work through. I mean, to put it quite basically, one thing is it just helps you pass the time. You know, just helps. You need something to do while you're laying there for 7 minutes. That can get pretty boring.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like some of the things that, you know, were really crucial? I mean, I know for me on a long free fall, it was, you know, relax, equalize. I just sort of had that on repeat. Like what were the specifics that, you know, really changed the game for you? Mind, body.
Yeah, I get what you mean about that telling yourself to relax. One sort of thing was it's going to sound weird. I allowed myself to feel stressed. I didn't try in the beginning. It was like, I must not feel stressed. I must relax harder. You know, it's just ridiculous. You know.
Yeah.
And then as the dives, you know, my dives started to get a bit longer and a bit more physically demanding. It was like I realized stress was inevitable, and I'm never gonna completely eradicate it. So why not try and work with it? You know, allow it to come in, and then just say no thanks. And this is what I learned with yoga nidra. You know, you can't fight these contractions on a breath hold. So you allow them to happen, and then you just take them and just put them over there and just think, thanks for your help, I'm done with you for a few minutes, you know, rather than fighting against it. And that was a nice game changer for me, for all diving, really.
Yeah, I think that word allow is so crucial, because you know, we're in the water, whether it's a deep dive or whether it's a static, we're not in control of the environment. And to allow everything that is just simply to be, and to take then all of that energy that we might, you know, put towards trying to change things, to just accepting, and then giving that, you know, sharpness of focus to exactly what we need to bring our attention and our awareness to moment by moment as we go through the process of the dive, whether it's a pool or a deep dive. Yeah, I want to just look at that, like the vocabulary that we have around diving, because I remember when, you know, when we first met in 2009, actually, I think we met in 2000 and
I think you came to Chepstow.
I came to Chepstow. Yeah, when I was just doing the national records. I think we met there the very first time. Yeah, and then in 2009, you came and you did that course with me, and it was, I remember the four of you were really, it was about mouthfill, you know, let's learn mouthfill. And it was such a great, experience for me as my first coaching experience, because when I'd started diving, and, you know, I was really moving through the numbers fast, in a way, I mean, relatively fast, not having squeezes, not having blackouts. So, you know, I also wasn't one of these kamikaze candidates that you see of people just, you know, right, I'm going to get fucking deep and do all of the records that I can. And I remember people sort of saying, yeah, you know, when you look at Sara, there's something different about her. She's focused. And I was like, what the hell are they talking about? I'm just kind of, you know, bimbling around and doing my thing and having fun. And when I met you guys, when you came out, and we were having sort of interactions, and I was sort of talking about the process of the dive and, you know, the mind-body connection. And I have to say, I was kind of like, I don't think they see this. I don't think they, like, you're all like, yeah, and where should our tongue be? And where, you know, at what point should we recharge, and how should we, you know, our shoulders, and it was all technique. And I was like, okay. And that was the moment I was like, I do things differently, because I see the technique follows what I'm thinking about and how I'm feeling, and whether I'm relaxed or stressed, and the vocabulary in acceptance or allowing or surrendering and in trust. And what I've seen, actually, because you've given me a sneak preview to the documentary that you're working on as well, is your vocabulary has shifted. And, you know, there were words in there, you know, you talked about surrender, you know, being completely surrendered to the dive and to the free fall, and completely in trust over the process, and that your body knows what to do. And I know that, you know, Lynn, your partner, long-term partner, is a huge part of your training. And I know that she was there for you remotely through VB, you know, when there were moments when you were freaking out and she was on the phone. And I just wonder how much part her yoga journey, because she's a yoga teacher and you run these yoga and freediving retreats in Ibiza together in the summer. I wonder how much she's had an influence in terms of the vocabulary, and how that's impacted also how you feel and think and approach your diving, and how much maybe you can't answer this, but how much it's also been your awareness growing as you get deeper, and as you sense, you know what, my body knows what it's doing, and you, of course, you have that feedback. It's a two-way process inside of our bodies. Like, whether you can kind of talk about that a little bit for us.
Well, that last point about like you sort of trusting the body, that's what freediving's taught me to do. Definitely, it's just all of this is just going to do what it's told. It's just a lump of flesh, and you can mold it to be however you like, but it's this that's going to control it, and that's what I've learned from freediving, definitely. And I think probably Lynn's yoga journey and my freediving journey began at around the same time. I think it's probably quite clear we were sort of in our mid to late 20s, and we were looking for something else, something different than a London lifestyle, which was amazing when you're in your 20s. But it just, there's something missing than, pubs 5 nights a week. And, we had a good life, but there was something missing. And then, her stuff, the stuff that she was into, was definitely a sort of window into another world that I wasn't very familiar with. So we sort of, our learning sort of came along together, I guess.
So you've sort of been exchanging and talking and sharing and
and then you start freediving, and everyone always says, oh, yoga and freediving very similar, and so then I started to think, okay, what's Lynn doing that I could apply to freediving? How can that stuff be useful to me?
And can you pull out any gems that you can share with us, like particularly the aspects that touched you, or like the yoga nidra, like had a big impact and enabled you?
I've always found like huge parallels with working like on a mat in a challenging posture, and keeping everything together, everything as it should be, balanced, and keeping your breath together. I've found huge parallels between that type of mentality and the mentality you need on a very long free dive or a long free fall. They're really one and the same. And also swinging from a rope and harness up a tree. Like you've got to have, your awareness has got to be on. Your antenna had definitely got to be on 360. The Wi-Fi is switched on, but you've also got to be hyper focused in an area and not let that focus become too much. Yeah. And I've recently been really reading a lot about flow states and stuff like that. And there's some really key sort of inputs you need for a flow state. You need something that's an exercise that's like moderately challenging. If it's too easy, you don't achieve flow. If it's too hard, you can't achieve flow. So it's got to be sort of moderately challenging. You need some kind of input, and I guess that's, I always felt that when I don't do much of a specific yoga class these days, but when I did, I was like, okay, immediately I could see this is connected. This is I need this kind of mental state when I'm underwater.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think about something I read years ago about stress. And stress can be a positive thing, that we need stress in order to adapt. If we don't have stress, we don't grow. Exactly. You take a very simple bicep curl. If you're always just doing it with no weights, you're not going to have any change, but you need to increase the weight in order to progress the adaptation. But if it's too much, you're not going to lift anything, so there's no adaptation either. And I see that is a principle that applies to everything. Like you just used it to apply it to flow state. I also use it to apply it to the mind. If we set our expectations for meditation, well, we don't even come to the fucking mat. So we're not going to meditate and we're not going to have any benefits. But also if we don't push ourselves a little bit into that zone of discomfort, we also won't get the benefit either. And can you think of sort of specific moments in your freediving career where a light bulb went on and it was just like a moment of clarity and aha, and now I get it? And because I'm sure that we all have 2 or 3 of these moments where something just really makes sense for us. Do you have any of those?
There's those dives where you repeat like a PB and the first couple of times are a bit sketchy, and then you have that one where it just clicks. But that probably comes into like not aha moments, but like learning how to train,
Yeah.
and learning how to progress in freediving, I think is really important, because you can have many aha moments if you train properly and with a little bit of direction.
Mm-hmm.
Learning, like, what really helped was having a method. I think perhaps when you're an intermediate diver, it's okay to be getting in with no real aim. So for example, someone's just done an introduction course or something like that. They need to be in the water a lot, just doing loads of diving. And then there's a point where actually you need a bit more of a focused drive. And once I realized that I needed to sort of be a bit more organized, that really helped. And then you know, there's always the odd individual dive that just feels incredible, but I didn't have the skill to quantify what I did to make that incredible.
Okay.
And it was one dive in 10 that felt amazing. And now it's like 99 out of 100 dives feel brilliant. The deep ones, yeah, they just feel great.
Yeah. I mean, I can remember one dive for myself was, it was 50, 55. It was maybe I was trying to see the arch or something. I can't remember. And I was diving with my buddy, and I don't know what happened, but I was kind of a bit stressed on the way back up. Nothing major. And she sort of said to me, what happened? It was not the same chilled Sara that I'm used to seeing on the ascent. So, did your lanyard get stuck on the bottom weight, or did you see the tuners down there and think they were a shark? Or, did you get a cramp? Are you super lactic? What happened? And like every single question, I was like, no. And then I was like, I did that to myself. Like my mind somehow, because our mind is constantly creating. And if we choose to believe that single thought, then we take ourselves down a rabbit hole. And that's what I did on that dive. Something flared at a moment of, fuck, I'm deep. Because maybe it was the first time I'd gone to that depth, or it was the first time I'd seen the arch, or, and I made an association of, this is now a deep dive. And then I'd allowed myself to believe that thought, and the mind-body connection then had made the body go, shit, get out of here, like swim faster. And then I think then what happens, well, what I know happens actually is it's not just a one-way, my mind told my body to panic, but the panic in my body reaffirmed that initial thought in my mind. Yes, see, it feels uncomfortable, get the hell out of here. And it's a feedback loop. And seeing it with that clarity on the surface was such a big moment for me in my diving, because I was like, I did that. I created that, and I don't have to do that ever again. And I didn't. And my dives got progressively deeper and easier. And I never again had that moment of panic. Even, 100 plus, even I did black out a few times, was never freaked out on a single dive, because I just made a promise to myself not to do that again. And I think that's also, it's a moment of waking up, and if we are blessed enough to have that clarity over, I had a thought, I chose to believe it, and the rest was the rabbit hole. Or I have the thought and I can just push it away, because I did have other crazy thoughts. I remember being down, I think 80 meters free immersion, and going, well, free immersion is normally the backup plan. Like if something goes wrong on constant weight, you pull up. If something goes wrong on no fins, you pull up. Pulling up. I've got no fins. Like, what if my shoulder dislocates? What do I do then? And I was just like, Sara, that is just crazy thinking. Stop. Just keep pulling, keep smiling, keep relaxing. Don't do that to yourself. It just doesn't help.
Yeah, it's a funny thing that I talk about, like, not allowing bad dives and feelings of pleasure, because like it's like I've come out the other side of that, And now the depths I'm going to, I'm dealing with narcosis,
Mm.
which gives me a very clear flash when I turn of complete negativity.
Oh,
Like,
really?
of just my whole life theory goes through my mind in the space of a second. I'm like, why are you doing this? You've been training for too long. You're tired. You're never going to make it up. Tomorrow you need to take 3 days rest. I have that immediate flash, and I've, you know, I'm aware enough now. I think if I'd increased to these kind of depths much sooner, I wouldn't have had the awareness to look at myself and think, okay, those negative thoughts aren't happening because you're not prepared. I'm definitely prepared for a deep dive, but it's like there's narcosis coming in now, and it's like one of the key things of narcosis is it amplifies that bit of negativity.
Okay.
But I'm confident enough that it's not because I'm actually bricking it. it's just the flash of narcosis is making that happen, but I'm very quickly able to push it out. But I'm not able to get rid of it. So I've had to learn to accept that as well, because when you turn at 112 and you have this thought of get the hell out of there, you need to take more rest. It's a scary thing. And when I first got to, I can pretty much guarantee dives deeper than 104, I'm going to feel some sort of narcosis. Sometimes it's, I wouldn't say pleasant, it's not unpleasant, but sometimes, most of the time, it's this negative thought, get out, you know, and I'm able to very quickly quiet that down.
Yeah. So it's seeing it for what it is, that like this, yeah, it's the acceptance, seeing it for what it is. It's narcosis. I don't need to go there. I just need to swim.
Yeah.
And stick to the dive plan, stick to what you know, stick to trusting your body. Yeah. And have there been moments, kind of on the flip side, where, oof, you know, it was a scary experience, either for yourself or safetying other people or witnessing people in competition? Have there been moments when you've just gone, whew, and maybe needed to take a step back and process that for yourself before you can go further?
Yeah, definitely. You know, if you free dive long enough, you are going to see some people pushing, and you're going to meet good divers and bad divers. And sometimes, you know, you do it long enough, you're going to see some accidents potentially. And you have to be comfortable with that. There was one, you know, I've done my fair share of rescues over the years. I've been on safety teams at fairly big competitions as well. So yeah, I've been first line, given a few kisses to people I didn't want to kiss. And yeah, there was one in particular, like when I arrived in Dahab 2 and a bit years ago, it was sort of, I was escaping Corona, same as a lot of people, because it was fairly free here. And it was just, oh, hang on a minute, I've got a couple of months in this place where I can dive every day, and no one's really bothering about face masks. So I was, I was diving here, and yeah, somebody got their monofin caught down at 85. I don't know if everyone's got a bit of a mental image of the pockets of a monofin. You know, when you kick forward, there's the stopper ball, and literally the ball just went in between and completely jammed in this diver's foot pockets at 85. And it was a very quiet day at the Blue Hole, so her buddy just shouted over to us, and we managed to retrieve the diver. She was fine, but it was the most extreme blackout I've ever seen. And there was a depth competition coming up about 3 weeks after that, that I was gearing up to prepare for. And after that rescue, and I sort of said to myself, this is not the right time to be doing your first depth competition in 6 years, I think it was. As I moved to Ibiza in between the time, and I didn't get to any depth comps. So I was really looking forward to this comp. Then this accident happened, and sort of it took time to process that, you know, because it was yeah, it was a tough thing to deal with. I was the frontline rescuer, administering oxygen on the shore once we got her to shore.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, that was sort of letting go, because I'm a little bit competitive. I don't know. I think freediving is the only thing I've been competitive in. I'm not a particularly pushy person. Freediving, I'm focused on, and I think competitiveness can be a good thing as long as it doesn't override you. So I was really looking forward to this comp, but I knew that it was going to be a stress to get myself through it. So I decided to just not do it, and that was hard to let that go, because I love competition. I hadn't done one in so long, but I knew it was the right thing to do, and long term it definitely was.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of my last World Championships in Kalamata, where Dave King, British diver, had a very deep squeeze, a very big blackout, and I was due to dive directly after him, same depth. And I think I went down to 20 meters, and I was like, no, today is not the day for deep dive, having witnessed that and those images in my head. And I remember, I also had then same competition, Mikkel Rissian losing his line on his no, it was free immersion, dive, and coming up on my rope 2 minutes before my official top, and not making that dive either. And I in that competition, I announced 3 world records and came out with, I think, a minus 160 something points. I mean, it was like the most minus points anyone had ever had in competition. And just feeling really happy, actually. And there were a lot of younger, less experienced freedivers at the competition. They were like, why are you not depressed? Why are you not angry? Why are you not frustrated? Why are you not pissed off? Like, why are you still smiling? And I was like, because I'm here, and it's not about the numbers, and it's not about the titles, and it's not about the records. And Dave is fine, and Mikkel is fine. And to be honest, that's so much more important. And if I choose to make a deep dive another day, there's always another day. And it just helped me to put things into, it was, for me, this was a big lesson. It was like thinking that I was going there to do some more records, walking away with none, gave me the perspective to see that it's not the records that I dive for. And that was such a liberation. And I think, hearing you say, well, I don't need to do this competition, like the competition itself, it's fun, but it's not what it's all about at the end of the day. And being able to have that clarity, because we get pushed forwards by our egos so much, driven by, and this is where I see you and I'm just like, Gary's got it. It's like, it's the passion for the experience rather than thinking that you need the number or the record or the title in order to be okay. We had a chat the other day, sort of in preparing for this, and when we talked about this accident and the safety that you did, you said you gave it space, and you didn't feel like you should do anything. And I think for me, that's such an important life lesson. Like, I teach freediving as a metaphor for life. And it goes both ways, of course, but, to recognize that if ever we find ourselves feeling that we should do something, it's because there's a belief that we need that in order to be okay. Rather than, like you said, your visualizations are all about the pleasure, or, the joy over the experience, or whatever it might be. Whenever I hear the word should, it's like there's a red flag, there's an alarm bell going off, and it's like, okay, just step away from this and have a look, because it's an opportunity to learn something and to let go, and then to come back to it with less pressure, less stress, less expectation, which is just much healthier. And if we look at free diving, like if we come to a free dive with that belief of I should do something, we're already in contraction.
Yeah.
And contraction is the quickest way to a lung squeeze.
Yeah.
The fastest, most direct route to a lung squeeze. So, you know, we are creating exactly the thing that we don't want to happen by pushing ourselves because of that fixed goal or that expectation or that need.
Yeah, that detachment has served me really well. Specifically, like at VB last year, I was just having the time of my life. You know, I didn't think I was close to getting a podium place, and I never have been with my free diving. It's only in the last couple of years that I've increased so that perhaps I'm one of the higher guys now, but
perhaps you are.
perhaps. Yeah, but that disconnection has helped me. You know, there was a point where I was diving around 60, 65, and I started to think, hang on a minute, these records, British records, are really close. And then Mike Board turned up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure with your help, he just nailed it. In 1 year, everything got stuck 20 meters deeper, and I was like, okay, forget all of that. You're years away from that, especially at the time I was landlocked in London, you know. So I was just like, all right, let's forget about that. So then I was just forced to just dive for pleasure. I wasn't, you know, even the small competitions I was doing, I wasn't getting medals there. You know, there was loads of people way deeper. So it was just like, okay, let's just have some fun with it. So I guess that kind of helped.
But okay, little bit devil's advocate here. So, I mean, back then you said, okay, well, it's 20 meters, it's out of my range, I let go of it. You're 18 meters away from Alexei at the moment. Is there something in you that's like, well, yeah, you know, maybe I could have a pop at it? Would you be as, I mean, I never said that. I would always shy away from that question when journalists started asking me, but, you know, do you think?
Yeah, now I do. In the last couple of years, and now I'm okay with the idea, because I think I put in that foundation work of not being too driven in the wrong way. Now I've got this skill base that allows me to literally, I feel like I could do 100 any day with very minimal prep. And then I think it's why wouldn't you as long as it's done in a sensible way, why wouldn't you see what you're capable of? And I'm looking forward to doing that over the next couple of years until I get too old for it, which is never.
No, I was listening to the latest Free Dive Cafe with Pete Botman, 60 I think now. Yeah, very exciting. I have one more question for you. If you can sort of put a ratio on it, because I think this is where a lot of people also struggle, because their mind is driving them towards the number and the result and the depth and the acknowledgement. How much rest plays a part?
Rest, yeah, it's like, I think rest is the most important part of anything you do for free diving. And the right type of rest, you know, there's a lot of science that's about the quality of sleep. Just shutting your eyes for 8 hours is not the same as having quality 6 hours sleep. And I definitely, this year in particular, you know, it's not a given, but generally the deeper the dives are, the higher level you're performing, the stress level potentially is going to go up with that. So I needed to find ways to manage my rest. And I'm not very good at resting. I've overtrained properly twice in my life. And when people say I'm a bit overtrained, I'm like, no. Overtraining is a full syndrome, and it's brutal. It's a really strange state to be in, because you're just buzzing on adrenaline, but you're exhausted. And 1 o'clock in the morning, your eyes are just completely wide awake, and it's a really weird, like hyper aware but not aware of anything state. So yeah, I definitely needed to listen to my own advice and take rest. So I started to look into this year. I started to look into ways of resting without just going for a nap, because if I sleep during the day, I either fall into a deep sleep, I wake up very grumpy, and then my evening sleep is just messed up. So I started to look into well, again, I mean, yoga nidra, but these days people are calling it NSDR, or non-sleep deep rest. The principles are really quite similar, though. I think the yogis had this worked out 3,000 years ago, and now the scientists are coining all these terms for it. But yeah, just ways to rest your subconscious, ways to rest your subconscious without actually just completely going to sleep. So it's like waking rest. It's not sleep, but you're resting the active areas of the brain. And it's really done wonders for me. I was doing sort of 2 or 3 sessions a day at VB because I knew my stress was high. I felt it, you know, you absorb it from everyone there, you know. So I was trying not to be overly social, which was hard because there were people there I hadn't seen in years. And it's a cool island, you want to explore it. But yeah, learning how to take care of yourself a little bit, and having a bit of a routine, you know, like 8:30, 9 o'clock, the phone and the computer are off. Well, I try my best. And I'm trying to get an evening routine and stuff. Yeah.
And between dives, you know, when you're back to your deep sessions, like days on, days off.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I don't have the luxury to do a lot of deep diving because I'm just a jobbing freediving instructor. So I need to work. So it's not like I have weeks and weeks and weeks where I can afford to be doing deep dives, because the deeper dives, you know, I'm not doing deep dives in the blue hole that often. If I'm doing a deep 100 plus, I want to be somewhere like Sharm el Sheikh.
The blue hole is not very deep for you now anymore. I
know. I remember the first time you took me there, and now thinking, oh, 92, I need more depth. It's nuts. What was the question? What were we talking about?
Yeah, when you are diving deep, so let's say prep for VB, and when you're at VB, like, you know, okay, I'm gonna do a deep dive, either a deep training dive or a maximum attempt. Like, how many days before are you resting? How many days after before you go again?
Well, yeah, I mean, consecutive days, once you're getting 100 plus consecutive days, I can do them, but they get hard. I surprised myself when I arrived at VB, actually. Jet lag cleared up very quickly, and I progressed quite quickly, sort of 10-meter jumps, which I'm really confident I can do, because it's more about this, allowing this to do its thing. I think once you've got the adaptation that I've got after the years, and the fact I'm in the water every day, I have that adaptation, and it's trusting that I have that adaptation. So yeah, consecutive deep dives, I have done them and they worked, but as that competition went on, I just got more fatigued, you know, so I had to really be more careful of it. And I've got a very short window of doing deep dives. Probably 2 weeks, I'd say, would be a long period.
Yeah, it's intense, huh?
Yeah, it is intense, and you know, you need a lot of focus to do very deep dives, and that takes its toll. It takes a toll on your personal life as well. I'm not sure how pleasant I am to live with.
Yeah.
Where you know, I'm not horrible. I'm not an ogre, but I am hyper focused, and there's not much space in the rest of my life for other things. And that's a bit unfair if you're living with a long-term partner. You know, you've got to consider that. You know, but if you've got someone that supports you, it's wonderful. But yeah, I'd say 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks, and then I really need to just detach. I need to take a week off and go and climb a mountain or do something else. Yeah,
I was the same. I mean, I did, running up to my 104, it was like I did a dive, no warm-up dive, one dive, and then took a week off. And then I
Yeah.
did another dive and took another week off. And then I
Wow,
did another dive and took like 10 days off. And that's how I got to 104, was nothing in between. It was just like rest, relaxation, meditation, and living by myself. So I didn't have to worry if I was a grumpy bitch or antisocial or anything like that.
Yeah, the dogs didn't mind then.
No, the dogs are very forgiving. The dogs are very forgiving. Yeah. So one thing I asked if you wouldn't mind doing just before we finish the call, I will open it up for anyone, if you've got questions, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask Gary, or even me, but please do. But if Gary would just share a short 3 to 5 minute visualization that he might typically use either in the water directly before a no warm-up dive or before he gets in the water. So whatever you feel you'd like to share, Gary, just so that we can all have an experience of like being on the journey with you and learning from you directly in a more experiential way rather than just chit chat. So I don't know if people need to, if you want to guide them to get comfortable or.
I think we could just do something sitting up, really.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing because I like to try and introduce a bit of meditation to people more these days. And one thing, people that aren't used to it, their mind wanders like crazy.
Yeah.
So it's about finding ways that help people just to maintain a bit of focus, because it is hard just to sit still for some people. Sometimes for me, it's hard just to sit still. So I use, I started to tune into the heartbeat, to the pulse, which is a really nice way of developing a bit of connection to yourself. And you'll notice, hopefully you'll notice some variability. So yeah, I mean, literally just hold your pulse and just take a moment to find your breath. And a general rule of thumb would be just to slightly extend the exhale. All your awareness needs to be on that heartbeat. And you'll notice, say you fall into a rhythm, perhaps it's 3 in and 6 out. Or perhaps it's 4 in and 8 out. Exhale roughly 2 times as long as the inhale. And when you're counting, you can use your heartbeat to count. And if you're really careful, you'll start to notice a difference on the inhale and a difference on the exhale. So you're counting 2, 3, 4 in, and you'll feel the pulse just slightly pick up speed. And then as you slowly string out an exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll notice that the heartbeat slowly starts to slow down. And I love doing this. I could sit here for an hour, I think. That feeling of just connection. And the feeling of feeling your body respond as well. So I start every meditation with a couple of minutes of just doing this. And then as I start to bring in a bit more mental work, perhaps visualizations, it might become harder to count those breaths. So you just focus on that same rhythm, 4 in, 8 out. And it's more about awareness on your breath. And then specifically for free diving, the way I apply these kind of meditations is I start to imagine myself free falling. And I imagine the emotion of happiness, just pleasure. You can sit there with a smile on your face. You can smile inside if you want. but it's that feeling of just gravity pulling you down. People describe it as a hug from the ocean. And it's such a wonderful mindset to be in. And me, even if a dive is deep and challenging, if it's pleasurable, then I've achieved my objective. I also like to visualize key moments in the dive. So one of the key moments for me is the long moment of free falling. And then I like to visualize the turn. And I imagine myself kicking off the bottom, just feeling powerful. This is what I was born to do. This is my body expressing itself in the best way possible. And then I like to bring some awareness to the last few meters of the dive as well. I like to imagine success. Imagine punching the air once I'm given that white card. I imagine high-fiving the safety divers. I imagine everyone smiling, everyone cheering. And then I just play that on a loop. But that pleasure and that free fall is something I come back to. I probably go through that every night when my head hits the pillow, to be honest. Because I'm not ashamed to say I'm completely addicted to that. And I think it's a really cool thing to be addicted to. And one nice visualization I do use is something I picked up in 2009 from Sara, is just imagining like light emanating from your third eye. And it's just, it's the visual of it I find really, really cool. Just this golden sunbeam coming out from my forehead, lighting up the inside of the blue hole. That image combined with pure pleasure. And that's how I want every free dive to be. So then you could come back to counting your breaths again. Tune in, feeling it slightly pick up as you finish the inhale. And then as you draw out that exhale nice and gently, 6, 7, 8 counts, you feel it slow down again. And now you're all expert freedivers.
Awesome. Thank you. That was lovely. Funny, actually, that's a technique that I've also, it's in my online videos, this meditation with the pulse.
Oh, wonderful.
It's in my first course there. So it pops up in, I think, every meditation tradition is this body-mind connection.
Yeah.
And trust, trust that our heart is always beating. Like there is,
so cool.
There's also, you said, the body will do, the body is a lump of flesh and it does whatever the mind does. But I also want to add another layer, like the body is also infinitely intelligent and wise. And, there is so much that we take for granted and we don't recognize as this incredible miracle of being in this human body. Those of you, we've all probably had breakfast by now today. Your body is busy digesting and breaking it down and taking all the different nutritional elements, the vitamins, and each of those different vitamins, the minerals, each of those different minerals, proteins, carbohydrates, and delivering it to your body where your body most needs it, and then getting rid of what was no longer needed. It's like, we don't have to negotiate that. We don't have to think about it. It's not how smart we are up here. PhD college professors will digest their breakfast as well as your bin man or, your supermarket cashier. And we tend to approach everything in life with this sense of the smarter I am and the more I apply myself, the better it's going to be. And freediving is such a leveler, because it's got nothing to do how smart we are. It's like the body already knows how to do it, and we need to get out of the way and and by get out of the way, I mean by overthinking everything and worrying and being in this egoic, you know, I've got to have 50 meters, or I've got to have 80 meters, or I've got to have 100, or I've got to have a national record, or I've got to have this or that, or I've got to be as good as my buddy or better, or I mean, it's infinite the number of bullshit stories that we tell ourselves about what we need to have in order to be okay. When we get rid of that, this and this are already doing it. And yeah, so okay, cool. That was a beautiful meditation. Thank you. So before we open it up to questions, because I really want to support Gary on his journey. I know he's looking for sponsorship. He's coaching now. He's done he's an equalization guru through Federico Mana's course. He's teaching in Dahab, he's coaching, and he's also looking for sponsorship. So Gary, can you just like give us a couple of minutes talking about, you know, what your goals are and what you need, and maybe in this community there's some networking opportunities, who knows, or even, you know, people want to come and dive with you in Dahab.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's a weird stage with my diving at the moment, because I feel like I've got a really high skill base now. The in-water stuff, I just need time, and to have time you need money. So it feels like the biggest obstacle for me at the moment is financial, which is a really weird stage to be at, because for years it's been, you know, I've needed to bring my skill and my fitness level up. But I feel immensely confident about my in-water stuff. So now it's just money. I need money to train. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I'm always trying to do something to try and work out how to gain some sponsorship. It's a problem that all athletes have. Yeah, so I'm just feeling my way through that at the moment, about how to approach companies, etc., how to be a bit better on social media, which doesn't really come naturally to me. Yeah. So yeah, there's work, which I love, and work. Someone just starts to question in the group about pool training. Actually, like I don't do much these days, just purely because of access. But here I have so much conditioning work because I'm in the water every day working with people. So that's a nice benefit to having to work all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess after the call, I'll be sharing the video, and I'll also post, you know, how everyone can get in touch with you. And you know, I know you had a GoFunding. I think you're going to reactivate the GoFunding, so we can also share those links. So Ollie Kristen has shared a question. Ollie, do you want to unmute and actually ask it?
All right. Good morning here from the States. The sun just came up here, so I'm a bit overexposed, I noticed. Very, very interesting discussion, conversation you had about fear, and then you sometimes use the word stress, and then sometimes again use the word fear. And I just wanted to ask you, from a personal experience, are these two distinct experiences for you? Like one thing is stress and the other thing is fear? Or is it sort of like stress, it becomes too high, then it flips into fear, and that's when things get out of control? What is your personal experience in that, in deep diving?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, great question. Cheers. I think probably I'm treating the two as quite similar. Maybe I'm even what's the word?
Interpreting?
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work. Yeah, so maybe I treat the two as the same when potentially they wouldn't be. I would perhaps think of fear being a bit more uncontrolled, whereas stress is a good thing. That's one of the cornerstones of the way I train people as well, is we is we learn a skill, we get to a certain level of mastery with the skill, and then we test the skill under stress. So we stress it, and if it's falling apart, then you're not there yet. And
that makes
to
total
manage
sense.
that skill under stress. So I definitely don't see stress as a bad word at all. I think stress is good. What Sara mentioned about you need to stress, you need to experience some stress, otherwise you don't change, you just stay stagnant. So stress is good. Perhaps fear would be stepping over stress, just over that line of stress when things do start to fall apart. But I don't actually experience fear anymore. It's just light stress, light enough to keep me focused.
If I can add something, I mean, I think there's what is happening in the real world. So there is the level of stress. So it could be, you know, okay, you're doing 20 meters and then you're doing 25 meters. That's an additional 5 meters of stress for the body in terms of time and depth and pressure and all of the physiological processes that need to deal with that additional 5 meters. And then there's also our perception. And that is something which is separate, and we can be in control of. We're not in control of what's outside of us, but we are in control of what's inside of us. And so the perception of stress. Now, if we're talking about a 20-meter diver, there's a lot of instructors in the room, they would not set the rope to 25. Yeah, because it would be perceived like that's not a wise thing to do mentally or physiologically for a student. So it'd be 21, 22. So that's the external thing, but then also mentally, how do we perceive things? That's something that we're in control of, or a lot of the time we don't realize we're in control of it because we allow the fear to go into that negative feedback loop of, I had this thought of fear, my body went into contraction, that contraction justified the fearful thought, and on I go. So if we can interject within that feedback loop and just go, it was just a thought, the body can relax again. Oh yeah, look, I feel relaxed again. So for me, the two things also are, it's useful to differentiate between what is outside of us and what's inside of us, what is within our control and what is ours to manage, and what is in that zone of accepting, allowing, letting go.
Yeah, I think once you learn that you do have a choice about whether this is going to ruin your day or whether you're going to allow it to focus you, that's really liberating, actually. And you know, take that out of freediving and apply that to your life, and that's a really wonderful way to live. Actually, it's like you're in the driver's seat, you're fully in control. You know. Maybe a good example, like I read an article recently about fight or flight, and this psychologist was basically saying it's a useless term because it's not something that really even exists in psychological terms. And her argument was like, if you take someone that's never been in the ocean or has only ever been up to their ankles, and then you take me. The thought of me jumping off a boat in the middle of the ocean sounds brilliant. But to the person who's never been in the ocean, that's petrifying. Yeah. So if there was a pure fight or flight response, we should realistically both be petrified of that situation. But we're not. You know, we're built differently. It's subjective. It's whether it's learned or whether it's you're born with a fear. It's not blanket over everyone. Otherwise, we'd see us all being petrified of the same thing. Yeah. So I've made a choice to not be scared and to welcome, because you know, someone else just asked a question actually about fear of depth, and you know, if I'm swimming in a brown murky lake, anything brushes my leg, and I'm going to absolutely scream like a little girl. Yeah, and yeah, I've been freediving. Where I learned to freedive was in a quarry. You know, and the viz was bad, and it was like 8 degrees or something. It was freezing, and there was fear, definite fear, because I couldn't see my feet, and you couldn't see your hand. So yeah, there was definitely fear of depth, But then I think she's asked like any advices on it. I think it's like again, it's the faith in what you're capable of, and accepting. Yes, the visibility is low, but yeah, also stop believing in Loch Ness Monster and stuff. You know, nothing's going to come out and grab your feet. But that comes with like controlling the environment a little bit, but also understanding that you can't control everything. And things will change without your doing, and being okay with that. But then you need the skill level to come up a little bit to be cool with that environment.
Yeah.
Helps, Sara.
If I can also quickly comment on that, it resonates really strongly with me what you're saying there. That so just a little bit of background. 12 years ago in my instructor presentation, the title was Anxiety Management in Deep Freediving. So as a psychologist, that was the interesting part when I got into professional freediving. In that sense, I never was a competitor, but as an instructor to help people deal with that more or less natural fear. And since then, I'm a little bit obsessed in talking to freedivers about this. How do you experience it personally? And then figure out maybe there's something we can learn from that and put that into freediving education then. So yeah, it's really interesting to listen to how you experience that.
Yeah, because it's there and it's always going to be there. You just got to, for me, it's like, the stage I'm at the moment is like, this is a choice. Am I going to let this ruin my day or ruin my dive? And I don't want it to. I like to have nice experiences in the water. So it's yeah. And again, what I mentioned about controlling your environment, or controlling the way you react to the environment. And that's something, this is, you know, there could be a number of reasons why freediving seems to suit slightly older, more mature people. I don't think I would have had this pace of mind if I'd started freediving at 15 and, you know, been in my 20s while I was hitting, you know, when I'm hitting big dives and deep numbers. I don't think I would have been able. No, 25-year-old me wouldn't have had the same.
I don't think it's a coincidence that many of these hardcore squeezes that we see in deep freediving happen to younger male freedivers that do not have this sensitivity towards their own mental state and just think freediving is the same like going to a CrossFit session and you just punch through the wall, and that's not ending well usually in freediving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ollie. So we've just had a question from Camille. Hello, Sara and Gary. Could you talk more about how to break the feedback loop, especially if it starts with feedback from the body as opposed to the mind? If a freediver has been diving with a push and conquer mindset for long and wants to deeply modify their whole diving, where would you begin? How would you make adaptations in the water in practical terms of training? Great question, Camille. Thank you. Gary, you want to go first? You can mute yourself, Camille, if you'd like to add anything there.
Hi, it was my question. I'm just with my friend Camille. Hi, I'm Ilaria.
Oh, okay, Ilaria, hey. Okay, you're on Camille's account. Great. Go, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a bad word in freediving, but shallow. Dive shallower, and that's not just like a magic thing, you know, take 20 meters less on the rope and you're going to nail it. But it's, I think one of the real cornerstones I work on with people is mastering shallow dives like to perfection. Once you get perfect 30-35 meter dives that you can do 10 times in a row, you can also do with a very short interval. This is another way I like to stress in a good way. Then that develops a pattern that when you start to go deeper, the only thing you need to change is the length of the rope, and you're adding a few seconds on the free fall, a few seconds on the ascent, That's the only thing you're changing. So it's all about developing autonomy, and you need that level of autonomy to enter into any sort of a flow state. There's Umberto Pellizzari tells a story about when he went and trained with Jacques Mayol, and Jacques Mayol said, go down to that bay there and go diving. So he went there, and it's like, it was 15 meters, this bay. He comes back the next day, and Jacques says, right, tomorrow, go diving there again. And all the while, Pellizzari's getting pretty fed up with this. And I think he spent 2 or 3 weeks diving in that bay. But then when they came back and they had a longer rope with a deeper line, he said his diving was completely transformed. He just spent 3 weeks perfecting 12, 15 meter dives. And then when he applied that knowledge to a 70-meter rope, it was like magic, you know.
I think we actually lost their connection then, but anyway, they can listen to it in the recording. One thing that I would say is if anyone is having uncomfortable physiological symptoms on a dive, and normally it's going to be pressure on the chest or an inability to equalize, that's what's going to stop people, is as Gary says, to stay shallow and get that mastered. But for me, it's also about slowing down. So taking yourself really slowly on a free immersion dive and feeling, like having all of your awareness in your body as to the feelings. And as soon as something arises that is slightly unpleasant, you know, you're just not in that nice place anymore. Stop.
Yeah,
What about going to the bottom of the room?
Funny you should mention this, actually, because I've had a student here, been training for a couple of months, and unfortunately he about 15 days ago he had a squeeze. He's only ever had one before years ago. He made a mistake, he messed up the turn, he did something quite foolish at 75, and that resulted in a squeeze. And he took a nice long break, and we got back for our first session day before yesterday. And he was doing a session just like you've described. Yeah. The squeeze, the injury forced him to, we had a rope set at 30, and it forced him to go down with hyper sensitivity. You know? Because he had to psychologically had to get this fear out of squeeze. That was really important. But also the plus side of a squeeze, which I think there are, they don't all have to be negative. I'm not recommending them, but yeah, it forced him to have this wonderful session, of complete awareness. And I said to him at the time, I'm a little bit jealous of your sessions. Like, I wish I wasn't teaching. I'd love to do a session like this. When was the last time any of us with a few years under our belt did a session like that? I can't remember the last time I did it. So next training session, I'm going to do a few dives like that, finding that glory again, you know, that beautiful treasure.
I mean, one thing I wanted to add about that is, like, when you are diving with that level of awareness and you feel something that is not pleasurable, slight pressure, slight contraction, slight anxiety, just to stop and just stay there for a moment and relax. Because for most people, okay, that pressure comes either because you are too deep for your flexibility, but most people it comes because they're telling themselves that they're too deep, or this is a bit scary, or I'm not sure what's going to happen, or it's a bit dark, or it's a bit cold, or I didn't sleep very well, whatever. And actually to notice the moment when that tension arises and just to stop and do just a little hang, it can be 2 seconds, to notice then that sensation leaves. Then you get the feedback of, oh, I created it. You don't need to continue going further, but you just need to get that awareness of, it's not because it's a dangerous environment and I'm too deep, it's because I think I'm too deep. And that creates the sensation in the water, which feeds back to the mental belief that it was too deep. And then by repeating that, staying, and then consciously, rather than panicking and rushing back to the surface, saying, okay, now I choose to go back, do it again. And maybe go a little bit deeper before the sensation comes. maybe you hang a little bit longer before it comes back. And you just expand outwards from that as a principle until you also maybe going a little bit deeper and waiting again until that sensation arises. And that's how you get to understand this mind-body connection, because you're experiencing it in real time again and again and again, and understanding where you actually are creating and seeing that it's not because you're super deep. It's because you're feeling some kind of anxiety or a need to control things or whatever it might be. So yeah. Ilaria, yes, I saw that you've you lost the connection. Sorry, this will be recorded so you can come back and see.
The girls are in Dahab anyway. I'll meet you for a coffee later and I'll tell you.
All right. Perfect. Perfect. Does anyone have any other questions?
Could I just follow up with what you were just saying?
Do. Yeah.
I've got to give Harry Chamas credit for this, but he has a really nice philosophy. He basically says there are no free dives that are challenging. There are no hard free dives. There are free dives that you're not ready for, that you're not prepared for, that you're not in physical shape for, that you don't have the technical skill for. But free diving itself is inherently not challenging. Yeah. And if you think, I don't know what level people are at, but if you take a 10-meter free dive on a coral reef, what's challenging about that? Nothing. You do that on a line that is close to your PB, all of a sudden it becomes challenging because perhaps you're not prepared for it yet. So that thought of like there are no challenging dives, it's dives that you're not ready for, I think it's quite a nice thing to have in your head.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? You can either jump in the chat or just unmute yourself. No? Okay. Okay. Is free falling scary at any moment? Antonia.
I mean, I just never done any dive more than 10 meters. I just started, and for me it was extremely scary just because it's dark water. Most of the time you don't see what's below, and it took a lot of time to overcome this because I just were panicking like, what are you gonna do? So I have never even reached the free falling dive, and I'm wondering if, like, how would you feel if you keep on free falling? It's like 50 meters and you're still falling somewhere. So I don't know the feeling, and I'm wondering how scary it is and like what happens with your brain. Would it be like, would I keep on falling and I would never be able to swim back? Like what if your body gonna be that heavy that you're gonna keep on falling forever, and this
and there's gonna be me.
So I like
Yeah, free falling forever sounds brilliant to me. So like free falling is not scary, but you have to surrender to it. You have to let go and trust, and that will come as you said. You're very early on your freediving journey. That will come. That will come with as your ability increases, as well as your mental comfort, and those two will go up together. And you know, some things, it sounds like you're diving in a lake or something like that. If the viz isn't that great, have some connection with the rope. Yeah, like that might help you feel a bit more emotionally like not so alone in the blue or the green or the brown, wherever you're diving. Yeah, maybe some connection with the rope, a hand running along it or something, just to give you a bit of comfort. You feel like someone's holding your hand. That might help you, but take your time with it. But once you do develop the skill level that allows you to really sort of let go, you'll be hooked. It's the greatest feeling ever.
There's for me, there's a lot in this question which I'd like to just jump in and add to. So the first thing is if you think of freediving as a meditation, we meditate with our eyes closed. Now, when people start free diving, they tend to want to have their eyes open because they think, shit, I need to know where everything is and what's going to happen. So as Gary said, connection with the rope is really good. You know where you are. Closing your eyes means it doesn't matter if it's green or brown or blue or black. You're not only worrying about what's out there, you are taking all of that energy that is going into the outside environment and putting it into yourself. And then you can focus on, am I relaxed? Is my belly tight? Is my jaw tight? Are my shoulders tight? Like, what is going on inside of my body? Because that is why we free dive. And that will give you all the feedback that you need. And by holding onto the rope or having a hand moving along the rope as you're kicking down, if you're doing constant weight, you take away that need to see. Also, what happens when we're looking at the rope is like, was that the 5 meter mark? Was that the 10 meter mark? Was that, where the fuck am I? And not only are we worrying where we are, but we're also then layering on judgment of whether that's deep or whether that's shit compared to what we wanted to do. And that is also mental processing and mental energy, which takes us out of being in the present moment. And simply your question, if I jump on that point of being in the present moment, you're not at the moment of free fall yet. Yeah, you haven't got there. Don't worry about it. Be really present at the level of diving that you are today. And that also applies to deep divers who may, like myself, I maybe did 100 meters 10 years ago. I would probably struggle to get to 20. So I would consider myself now, yes, I have all of that experience, but I'm not actively freediving. So I would have to consider myself as the freediver I am today. Not what I was 10 years ago or 2 weeks ago, or what I might be if I were to start training again in 1 month or 6 months or a year. Be in the present moment. In the big scale of, okay, this is where I am in my training. This is what I've learned. This is what I'm doing now. And within the micro of the actual dive. And that will really, really help you to relax. Because at the moment, there's a lot of overthinking of what's out there in the water and also what's out there in the future. And it doesn't serve. It causes fear and contraction. And that is a lesson for life.
Yeah,
That's where freediving becomes this amazing teacher of how do we live our lives? Do I tend to worry about what's happening next week or tomorrow, or can I just be here now?
Yeah, there's like an absolute wealth of really beautiful writings on living in the moment, because it's literally all there is.
Yeah.
What we spoke about 2 minutes ago is gone, and what we're going to speak about in a minute's time hasn't happened yet. So it's just this moment. That's all there is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Great question, Antonia. Anyone else? No?
Jasper's raised a hand.
Okay. Unmute yourself.
Hi, Gary and
Hey.
Sarah. Nice to meet
Hey,
you all.
good to see you.
It's such a pleasure to be hearing you guys share about freediving and well-being, and it's something that I've been interested to really go into more in my line of work, in my line of way of life. And so I just started my freediving certification. I just got certified, and I hope to develop it more, especially in this idea of well-being aspect. Any thoughts or suggestions or advice for someone who is desiring to go down towards this path?
Lots. Gary, you
Yeah,
go.
Thank you.
Who's got another 2 hours free?
Yeah. We'll wind this up when the sun goes down.
Yeah. Like, it's the process. You've got to learn to love the process with anything you do. Like I've got 16 years under my belt. Certainly for the last 2-3, I've been really 100% professional freediver. And you know, I've been to 112. I've got my first national record. I didn't, after that national record, I didn't say, okay, freediving, completed it. That's me done. There's never a stage where you get in any activity where you think, okay, I've finished that now, what next? So there's never an end point is what I'm getting at. So if there's never an end point, then all you have is the journey. You know, even if I get a world record, it's like, what's the next world record? It's just a journey. And if you don't love the journey, then there's nothing else, because you never finish and become a free diver. You know, I'm learning every day. So that's, I think for me, like, learning to love the journey is the one. And that's what will keep you getting up every day. That's what will get you to put your wetsuit on when it's freezing cold. That's, you know, that's what will make you go to the pool to train. That's what will make you put one foot in front of the other, is just loving the process of it. So yeah, take your time, man. Take your time, enjoy your process, and take coaching, take advice from more experienced people. You know, I probably floated around for a while in my early days. I probably could have progressed a bit faster if I'd had a bit more direction, but then I'm kind of glad I didn't, because it allowed me to feel my own way and find it in my own organic way, you know.
Yeah, I would add to what Gary says, is that for me, curiosity was such a key part of the journey early on. Yeah. Now, obviously, my journey was very, very different to Gary's, in that I was living in Dahab full time, and I was just like bomb. Like there were no barriers, there were no obstacles. And I was lucky that I was already, yoga, meditation was already, a living part of my life. So I had that awareness of whenever something came up, like that dive, when I had that fearful thought and, okay, ticked off the boxes, nothing bad happened. Oh, I created it myself. Okay, I don't need to do that. Other people may have stayed stuck with that fearful dive or not understanding what had happened for longer. I was just lucky that I could move through it quickly. But the key thing was just like curiosity. Like, I was not an athlete. And there's a very funny interview, probably somewhere online, of Herbert Nitsch going, well, you know, she's short and she doesn't have an athletic body, does she? And I'm like, Herbert, don't say that. I just a record. But you know, there was no expectation from me or from anybody else that I was going to do anything spectacular. And so for me, it was just like, holy shit, look what I just did. That was interesting. Oh, I wonder if I could go a bit further. Like, I was never putting the goal out ahead in front of me saying, I have to get here. I was just like, oh, that one felt okay. That felt quite easy. I wonder if I can do 2 meters deeper. And I wonder if I could go a little bit further. And then the national records and the world records just came, as, to use Gary's word, as part of the journey. So curiosity to draw you forwards without a fixed goal, because the fixed goal is contracting and is limiting massively. And just having that sort of that open-heartedness, that open mind of, I wonder, like those words for me were so important. I wonder what's going to happen today, you know, on a 40-meter dive, on a 104-meter dive. I wonder. Yeah. I wonder what I'm going to learn. I wonder what the ocean is going to show me today. So just to stay open and relaxed and trusting. So just a little, we've got another little question here from, Charlie, late to the party. If you've already covered this, please ignore. Sara, when I interviewed you, you talked a lot about taking the ego away from deep diving to really thrive. Was wondering what Gary's take is on this. Doing it for the right reasons and not just for the numbers. From an outsider's view, it seems you've always had a good approach and dive because you love it, not for the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I touched on that when I spoke about, you know, never being a completed article, you know, and just enjoying the journey. And yeah, for me, my diving's always been really personal. It's only been in the last couple of years where I'm hitting really deep numbers that I've suddenly started to open that thinking out, thinking, oh, I could get a bronze medal at this one, you know, and I could come away with half a wetsuit or something as a prize. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully I touched on that in that question.
Yeah. I think, you know, right reasons, it makes me think of Buddhist teachings, you know, right thinking and right speech. You know, the right reasons are expansion, curiosity. And for me, when I'm working with students, I always look to separate the values of, like, what do you think about when you think about spirit? It's joy, it's pleasure, it's bliss, it's relaxation, it's happiness, it's curiosity, like play. There are so many words that, you know, if you think about yourself as spirit beyond this human existence, like, and if you struggle with that as a concept, go back to yourself as a small child. Like that feeling of the days go on forever, life is just play. Maybe your first experience in the water, if it was a joyful experience, like you can find those qualities. If it's to do with something limited, fixed, it's egoic. There's a should, there's an expectation, there's a need, there's a sense of contraction or fear. Then that tends to be, it's the ego is driving you towards something, and that for me is a wrong reason to dive. But the difference between those two, the right reason, the wrong reason, is the difference between a dive that feels like shit or ends up in a squeeze or an early turn or a blackout or just not being fun, hating being in the water, and the dives which get progressively deeper, feel progressively easier, and are always just, oh, that was just so much fun, that was so great. And it's because it's when we're diving with that purity of intention, which is spirit, or whether we're diving with that contracted intention because we believe we need something. We believe we need to be something more or to have something more than we do right now in order to be accepted, loved, respected, acknowledged, whatever. So that for me would be, the right versus the wrong. And a couple of basic safety questions from Antonia. What is the deepest to go without a rope in open water? And what about diving alone?
I mean, they're quite subjective questions. Going without a rope in open water, is there current? You know, is there bad visibility? Is there waves? I mean, who knows? I could name an arbitrary number, but it would be probably different. I mean, I think Antonia mentioned she was around 10-meter PB. So for you, 10 meters is deep to go in open water. Me, I could probably quite happily be doing 20 or 30 meters. But then that comes with you have to organize that well. You have to have buddies with you, and if you're going at all out of view, then it has to change, you know.
It's not like 100 meters.
Sorry?
Not like 100 meters, just diving like a mermaid.
Yeah, if you're exploring a coral reef and the visibility is great, then yeah, 10, 15 meters, have some fun, of course, always with a buddy watching you. But yeah, and then do I personally go for dives alone without a buddy? I've never done that. I might, if I'm out for a swim, I'm a free diver. It's quite nice to go down to 15 or 20 and just check out some fish, but it's all about limits, and your limit is not my limit, and it's about knowing yourself. And I think having a good, strong self-preservation mechanism is healthy. So I've never done anything challenging, but then challenging is a word that changes day by day. If I go in the water and I'm hungover, 5-meter dive is going to feel pretty rough. But if I was to go in the water now, I could do 15, 20 meters and have some fun. But as a rule, I won't. It's more fun with other people.
Yeah.
and that's about
Yeah. So we're coming up for 2 hours. Good grief.
Sorry.
So no, it's great. So I'm just going to say one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. And if there isn't a question, then we're going to wrap it up now. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Antonia. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you all so much. I will be looking at doing these on a regular basis, maybe once a month. If you have somebody that you would like me to interview, or there's somebody that you want to get in the hot seat, let me know. I'll be sending an email out to everybody after this call with details of the video, and also how to contact Gary, how to contact me. If any of you need coaching or advice, Gary in Dahab, me online, then we'd both be delighted to help you. And yeah, I just wind up by, Gary, have an amazing season. I'm super excited for your potential, and not just the potential that I see, but also the unexplored, the unexplored, because I just see that you've got the right mindset now. Just, it's like the doors are wide open for you. So just, as you say, it's just a matter of time and being able to find that balance between working for an income and making time for rest and training. So yeah, hopefully also this might open up some opportunities for sponsorship or funding. So I think we're all rooting for you.
Thank you. That's really nice. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks.
Thank you for taking the time today. Thank you everybody for joining all around the world. It's just been so nice to see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones as well. And yeah, it's great to share this time. Thank you all so much. Dive deep, be safe, have fun. Love you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.